Jujutsu Kaisen goes hard with its animation, story, characters, and their arcs. It does not let up with its momentum, and it tops it all off with a banger of a magic system. You can't get more metal than people who get their superpowers from feeling negative emotions. But it's not just the concepts. The variety of powers and abilities in this show are nothing short of inspiring, with their jaw-dropping visuals and immeasurable creativity and intricacies of these abilities. But it does not stop here. Jujutsu Kaisen has got to have some of the coolest, most satisfying fight scenes I have ever experienced in anime. You never know who is going to live or die, and what really drives up the stakes and tension launching these fights into the stratosphere is the incorporation of domain expansions. Just when the fight is going one way, an Uno Reverso card of the domain expansion is whipped out in a very Yu-Gi-Oh-esque style fashion, and suddenly a fight that had almost concluded is flipped on its head in an instant, and now feels near impossible to win. This is the impact of domain expansions. This is the weight that is Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, what if I told you there was a way to carry this weight into your Dungeons & Dragons games, ramping up its intensity into infinity and creating unforgettable cinematic moments at your table? Sit back and strap in, because we're going to dive into the world of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, I have discussed domain expansions before in this channel, but the rules I created for them were designed for the use of DMs and their controlled NPCs and monsters. And if you're a DM and want to watch that, go check it out right here. But today we're bouncing off my previous video on binding vows and looking at an entire skill tree that I made for domain expansions. This is a skill tree you can progress through as you level up in your own D&D games, developing and expanding on the powers and abilities of your own personal domain expansion. You'll watch it grow as you do, and you can design it in any way you choose. Make it larger than life, deadly as hell inside, or have it entirely focused on deconstructing enemy domains. The choice is yours. This system of incorporating skill trees into your D&D games is something that I've been developing a lot on this channel. I believe it adds more freedom to your character creation, allowing you to easily optimize in more unique and personal builds that more strongly reflect your vision of your character. I've been developing a modular system for D&D which is entirely focused around a classless system. And so if you're interested in that, do subscribe so you don't miss out my next video where I'll be discussing that new system in great detail. But also, if you want a better insight into this skill tree system that I'm developing, check out a few of these video links down below in the description for more information, and then hop back over here and watch me break down my domain expansion skill tree. So, Jujutsu Kaisen very clearly uses a hard magic system. There are rules and technicalities when it comes to using these fantastical powers of this world, and domain expansions are no exception. We need to address what the rules around domain expansions are so we can convert those limitations into D&D mechanics. And so, what are they? Domain expansions are extra-dimensional spaces, metaphysical landscapes within the mind of its creator that reflect their personality, powers, and their very soul. When you first learn about how to create a domain, as its creator, you will be able to choose what the environment looks like without describing any harmful environmental effects. But you will soon enough, so do not worry. When a domain is created, it typically pulls people around the user into the domain and captures them within this metaphysical space. From outside, it looks like a solid sphere of darkness, but the inside of the domain is typically much larger. However, there are exceptions to this, such as borderless domains. which I will cover later in this video. But what is important to note is that domain expansions are typically used as a last resort. Creating them takes a heavy toll on the users and leaves them exhausted and vulnerable once they are dismissed. Because of this, the Jujutsu sorcerers who create them typically do so to end a fight quickly. Jujutsu sorcerers often achieve this victory by creating a sure hit effect within their domains, allowing every attack they make to automatically succeed at hitting their target. But for anyone reading the manga, you probably know that this is an optional feature. But regardless of whether or not a domain has this feature, domain expansions are still made to devastate and are designed to nab their creators a guaranteed win in the fight. But for anyone who watches the show, we also know that the latter does not always happen. Domains also have a few rules around being broken into and out of, which I'll cover in more detail later, but also what happens when someone activates their domain within another creature's domain. And finally, we know that domain expansions can be or look like anything. Gege Akutami, the creator of Jujutsu Kaisen, does not skip a beat when it comes to creativity, continuously amazing us with a never-ending display of his imagination, showcasing an incredible complex array of powers and abilities within his manga. We have a washed-up comedian who has the ability to make anything happen that he deems to be funny. We have a domain expansion that is just one giant pachinko machine, and one of the antagonists, Gojo, simply has the infinite void of space as his domain. We have elements of tropical islands, an evil soup, and far too many domains named after female organs.
Soup and female organs.
Yeah. Now, I need to create a system that incorporates all of these rules while also enabling a player's creativity to design their own custom domains. And finally, we need to try to stay true to the original source material so as to appease all of you die-hard manga fans out there. So, let's see how I did. Our first hurdle is the toll that domain expansions have on the user, capturing that feeling of urgency and the essence that this is a final gambit, and if it can't end the fight soon, you're probably screwed. And so, number one, you can only activate your domain once per short rest, and when you do so, you reduce your hit point maximum by 10. On top of that, if you want to maintain your domain each round, you need to reduce your maximum hit points by 10 again at the start of your turn in order to do so. Doing this gives you an additional round of combat where your domain is active. However, you can only have a domain expansion active for a total number of rounds equal to your proficiency modifier. This really captures the sensation of a domain expansion exhausting its user, draining them of their vitality and putting a ticking timer on the situation. And be warned, you can only get back those lost hit points after taking a long rest. So if you survive this encounter, you still need to progress through the rest of your adventuring day in a far more vulnerable state. When you do activate your domain as an action, it pulls every creature within a 20-foot radius around you into this new extra dimensional space. From the outside, it simply looks like everyone's been pulled into a 40-foot diameter wide sphere. But from the inside, people exist in an entirely new space, twice as large as the domain looks from the outside. But when you first create a domain, it won't initially be anything devastating other than this. It's a handy environment that you can pull people into for safety reasons or to interfere with another creature's domain. But if you really want to juice it up, you're going to have to start investing in this super sexy skill tree I have made. Oh no, what a shame. Following on from my Binding Vows skill tree, you should unlock the ability to create domain expansions around level 13. And so from that point on, anytime you level up and gain a pack point to spend in the Binding Vows skill tree, you can instead start spending them in this new skill tree of domain expansions, with each pack point being worth 3 points that you can spend in the domain expansion skill tree. But as a DM, you might want to tweak this number, maybe making it a 1-to-1 ratio, or perhaps doubling the points, if you really want to slow down that leveling process for your players. And when you start progressing through the skill tree, you will start here in the central node and work your way outwards. This center node is considered unlocked for you, and you'll automatically have a point assigned in its center. From here, you can spend points in any nodes connecting back to the central node or any other node you have invested points into. For example, if I spend a point in the chance node, now I have access to the auto hit, 777 and gamble node, as well as any other nodes connected back to the central node, which is also considered unlocked. If this is a little confusing, I recommend checking out this video here, where I go in more depth with my explanation on how this skill tree system works. But essentially, as you level up your character, you can progress through this skill tree alongside your typical leveling system and watch your domain expansion grow in power. So let's take a quick look through all of the powers and abilities on this skill tree, and keep in mind each node on this skill tree can be spec'd into more than once, increasing the strength of their benefits with each purchase. And as we describe each of these powers and abilities here on the skill tree, you might start to paint a picture in your own minds of what your character's domain would look like. Let me know in the comments below what it would be, how it would look, and what character would have created it. I'd love to know. But starting right off in the center is your domain duration node. Investing in this, as you might imagine, increases the length of time you can have a domain active by 2 additional rounds. Alongside this, each additional point you spend in this node allows you to activate your domain 1 additional time before you need to take a short rest. The space node increases the external radius of your domain by an additional 10 feet, which in turn expands its interior size. Not only that, but you can now teleport on your turn as a free action, with the distance you're able to travel being tied to the number of points invested in this node. Physical centers you as the domain's main focus, doing everything it can to enhance your physical abilities. Your attack rolls increase, and the number you need to score a critical hit in this domain decreases. You could invest solely in this node if you want to focus on getting constant critical hits while this domain is active. Environment reduces creatures' movement speeds in your domain, as well as making it harder for them to succeed in dexterity saving throws. The mental node strengthens your domain's DC, which I go into more detail in the document I've included below, and also later in this video, but also it increases the value of your concentration checks while your domain is active, which proves super useful when it comes to domain clashes, which I'll also talk about later in this video. The chance node just makes you super lucky while you're in your domain. Ability checks and saving throws are easier for you and harder for your opponents, but also you gain a luck point every time you invest in this node. Now, moving on to the next tier of abilities in this tree, the first abilities I described are pretty generic, but also very flexible. But as you travel further from the center of this skill tree, you'll notice your domain expansions begin to specialize and define themselves a little more. Starting off, you have the very famous auto hit feature, common to most domains in Jujutsu Kaisen. This feature allows you to automatically hit a target with an attack you make, or make one creature automatically fail a saving throw against one of your spells. But you can only do this a number of times per round, equal to the amount of times you've invested in this node. Pretty powerful stuff, but just note that these attacks can never really be a critical hit. The boundless domain stretches and warps your domain beyond human comprehension. Perspective skews, causing one to lose all sense of space and direction. You multiply the interior size of your domain by 10 for each point invested in this node, but also reduce enemies' chances to hit and force them to make perception checks at a disadvantage as they become disorientated and discombobulated. The borderless domain ability is one you might be familiar with if you're up to date with the anime. If not, skip ahead to this point because I'm going to be spoiling just a little bit, mainly with the footage and things. But when you create your domain, you can choose to now remove its borders. In doing so, its internal size becomes its external size, having it expand across a vast area. This does mean that people can simply now walk out of your domain, but also it means a lot more creatures are going to be subject to its effects. Embody is a fun one. You share your domain with other allies, giving them all tiny little borderless domains around them, granting them each the benefits of your own domain. Environmental hazard is pretty straightforward. At the start of each creature's turn, they automatically take damage, be it fire, cold, acid, etc. This embodies the idea of your domain being a harsh environment where very few struggle to even exist in for just a few moments. Labyrinth, as you can imagine, turns your domain into a complicated sanctum that disorientates creatures and applies the effect of the confusion spell on them as they try to navigate through your domain's ever-shifting walls. Now, you might know why the comedic relief node is here, and I'm sure you manga fans are very happy to see it. And to summarize its ability, whenever you or another creature in your domain makes an attack roll, casts a spell, makes a skill check or a saving throw, you or they must make a wisdom saving throw against your own domain's DC. If either you or they fail the saving throw, you decide if the action performed is funny or not funny. If it's funny, you add a bonus to the roll to help it succeed. If it's deemed unfunny, then the number is instead subtracted from the roll, ideally causing it to fail. The judged is pretty complex, so do check it out after this video, but essentially, your domain becomes a courtroom where you drag one creature into. This creature is then put on trial with you accusing them of a particular crime, and they will try to defend themselves. I'm actually super proud of this little system I've designed for conducting a metaphysical court case. And I think it has a lot of potential for even being applied to an actual court case or similar scenarios in Dungeons & Dragons. I won't spoil anything here, but drop me a message in the comments below on your thoughts on this mini rule system that I've made. Gambler is also super fun, and I'm sure it'll be a favorite amongst any of your party members who like rolling dice and playing luck-related builds like a wild magic sorcerer. Before you make an attack roll, you can choose to make a gamble. If your attack hits, it deals additional damage. But if it fails the gamble and misses, you end up taking that bonus damage instead. But then the more you invest in this node, the higher a gamble you can make, but also increase your attack modifier to heighten your chances of success. But now we're going to move on to the big hitters of this domain expansion skill tree. The highest tier you can reach, which of course grants you access to some very powerful abilities, starting with none other than Infinite Void. Gojo's signature domain exposes its victims to the inner world of his limitless technique. Translated to D&D mechanics, you expose all creatures in your domain to something either incredibly horrifying or so incomprehensible that they are simply unable to react, unable to respond. Creatures need to make a saving throw at the start of each of their turns against your domain's DC, or simply become stunned for their turn. However, due to its immense power, when activating or maintaining this domain, the amount you reduce your maximum hit points by is doubled. Only those as powerful as Gojo can pull off such a feat. Malevolent Shrine, or Malevolent Kitchen, whichever translation you prefer, allows you to hit additional targets in your domain whenever you make an attack roll. If you invest enough points into this ability, you can hit everyone in your domain whenever you make a single attack. Elemental Transformation turns you into a massive ass elemental and you become the domain. Domain Bane focuses entirely on the deconstruction of other domains, as well as turning your own domain into an area of dead magic, where you are the only one who can occasionally cast spells. Gold Rush, I love. It allows you to spend gold and automatically deal damage to creatures in your domain based on the amount of gold you spend. And if someone dies in your domain, they turn into a big old pile of coins instead, and the cycle continues. Any Final Fantasy fans might appreciate this one. And then finally, 777 is a little complicated, as is the domain that I've inspired this off of. Essentially, when you make an attack, similar to the gamble ability, you can make the attack a gamble, but instead you roll 3d8s. If you roll any doubles, the damage of your attack is doubled. If you roll 3 of a kind, the damage is tripled. But if you don't roll any doubles or triples, your attack deals half damage. Additionally, if you roll 2 7s, you get to attempt to re-roll the third dice, and if you get 3 7s, your damage is tripled as normal, but then you get to roll the dice again to see if you get any additional multipliers. This ability allows you to make additional re-rolls for each point invested in it, but it also pairs nicely with the Lucky node and the Gamble node. This, as you can probably imagine, is my attempt at capturing a fan favorite, Kari's domain expansion, Idle Death Gamble. But there you have it, 20 different powers and abilities that can be leveled up and paired up in an infinite number of different ways to help you tailor design a fantastically broken domain expansion that feels personal and wholly unique to your character. And I've combined all of this info into one big old document with all of the rules and explanations that you should need to incorporate this into your own games. Included in this document are rules for breaking and entering domains, as well as creating simple domains that anyone with enough skill can create, even if you can't create a full domain yourself. Additionally, I go into detail on how domain clashes work, a super cool feature of this series and one I hope I did justice. And now I will just go into a little detail on how domain clashes work and domain DCs and everything else, but if that doesn't really interest you and you just want to read it yourself, go grab that PDF in the description below. But for anyone who is interested, I'll just give a quick summary on each of these rulings. So every domain has a DC that's based off of one ability of your choosing. So you're not limited to simply one's mental traits. If someone wishes to break into a domain, they make a melee attack roll against the domain user's DC, and if they succeed, they fall through the barrier and end up inside the domain with their point of entry quickly closing behind them. But as for breaking out of domains, it's a little trickier, but there are a few methods. You can simply try to harm the domain's creator enough, and that will hopefully scare them into dismissing their domain in fear of dying from overexertion. Or you can try to create a simple domain, creating a 5-foot wide exit point next to you. Creating a simple domain requires the creator to either spend a 3rd level or higher spell slot, or reduce their maximum hit point score by 20. And each turn they maintain their domain, they have to repeat this action. And this can be done by anyone regardless of the fact that they're able to create a domain or not. Or finally, a 3rd attempt at escaping a domain is to challenge them to a domain clash by trying to overwhelm their domain with one of your own. Doing this forces a domain clash, and during this period, the ability of both domains are nullified, and it'll be your turn as a DM to collaborate with the players to describe what a fusion of 2 domains looks like. At the start of each turn of those participating in the domain clash, you must make a concentration check against your opponent's domain DC. Each failure reduces your maximum hit points by 10, but the first to reach 3 successes overwhelms the opponent's domain and takes it over with their own. But there you have it, that's a quick summary of those rules, but if you want more information, do check out the PDF in the description below. But that is it, folks. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. This video has been a long time coming and I wanted to do it right. And so for all of you who have made it here, I give you the entire document for all of these rules, along with the skill tree itself, for absolutely free. It's just there for all of you guys to try out, to play. I just want to thank you all for supporting me and all the videos I've been making up until now. So this is just a little thank you. Go check it out in the description below. And for anyone who wants a prettier artistic version of the skill tree, it's also available on my Patreon. My Patreon is a fantastic way to support me and everything I do, so thank you so much to all of my Patreons over there who support me. You are incredible. I'll be running a D&D one-shot with all my patrons soon enough, so there's one spot still available as of recording this video. So if you want to nab it, go grab it while it's there. But that's it for me though. Go have fun, domain expanding all over the place. Let me know your thoughts on this system. Is it for you? Is it everything you had ever hoped and dreamed for? And how will you use it in your games? DMs, do share this with your players. Players, share this video with your DMs. Let's all chat about it here or over on Discord and discuss what creative ways you plan on using these newfound powers. Also, if you enjoyed this video, go check out any of my other videos over here where I talk about skill trees and stuff. But now, I've gotta go. I'll see you in the next video. I wish you all the best. Have fun. Woohoo!